Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here and welcome to today's webinar. I'm glad you're here and I'm excited to learn alongside you. My name is Liz Bell. I am a reporter covering early care and education for EdNC.org. And I have been following and writing about the work of the pre-K priority for a little more than a year, as an example of both the challenges and opportunities communities face in ensuring access to high quality, equitable pre-K for children and families. As someone who has written and thought a lot about pre-K in North Carolina, Forsyth's effort has stuck out to me because of its collaborative and holistic approach, its focus on centering parent voice, and the ways it illuminates statewide funding and policy issues. We're going to get into a lot of that today, so I'm excited. Our discussion specifically will focus on the work, findings, and recommendations of the Forsyth County Early Childhood Task Force, which has worked in conjunction with the Pre-K Priority Community Collaborative on establishing a vision for the foundations of an equitable, accessible, high-quality pre-K system to serve all children in Forsyth County. The task force report, released earlier this fall, covers 19 recommendations in all, but our discussion today will focus on 3 key areas, and those are advocacy, recruiting, supporting, and retaining educators, and support for children and families. Leading our discussion will be our expert panelists, all members of the task force and advocates for the pre-K priority. So before we get started, I'd like to briefly introduce them. Joining us today and guiding us today, we have Don Martin, Forsyth County Commissioner and Chair of the Forsyth County Early Childhood Task Force. Tricia McManus, Superintendent of Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools and the Vice Chair of the Early Childhood Task Force. Tracy Ross, President and CEO of Family Services. Dr. Lewis Finney, CEO of Smart Start of Forsyth County. Dr. Kim Pemberton, who unfortunately, due to a last-minute conflict, can't join us today. She is the chair of the Department of Education and an associate professor at Winston-Salem State University. Instead, we are happy to have Leslie Mullenix, pre-K priority manager, with us, just guiding that part of our discussion. With us today, we also have Odette Sanchez, the Executive Director of Latino Community Services, and Katura Jackson, Executive Director of the Child Care Resource Center. So thank you all for being with us and guiding us through these important topics today. Lastly, for everyone joining us, we encourage your questions and comments. Please submit those with the Q&A tool at the bottom, and we will answer them as we have time at the end of our time together. Our discussion begins with the topic of advocacy, which will be led by Commissioner Martin and Dr. Lewis Finney. To kick us off today, I'd love to welcome Dr. Finney.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to lead us off this afternoon talking about our recommendations around advocacy. This topic is key to our work at Smart Start of Forsyth County, given the work we do in Forsyth County to really change and transform our system, but also to the overall work of the pre-K priority overall. Topics where we already had success was the awarding of the 2-year ARPA grant and the pilot program in 30 classrooms. And we're excited about that. And some of those key areas of focus are educators, which is the primary purpose while we're here. Also the families, because we firmly believe that parents are the first teachers. Our research to make sure that the data and decisions that we make are data-driven, particularly around this particular project. But I'll be remiss if I do not just welcome and thank our commissioners That's all of them in Forsyth County. For them making the choice to make a local investment to something so critical, such as early childhood and investing in the pre-K priority. Now, this is unlike other counties because we're now joining other counties. We're doing the same. You have Mecklenburg with their pre-K program. You have Durham, Wake, and Buncombe. But I still think Forsyth is unique in their approach because you look at the entire group that works with this, we have a unique pilot that involves the entire community. Now, more work does need to be done, particularly advocacy at the state level, because there's still some state level areas, particularly around the NC pre-K program, that we're considering that really needs the attention of the state to support our specific community. North Carolina pre-K dollars, looking at that model, we need to focus on how to secure more dollars. Because from our perspective, every child in the county and the state deserves equitable funding, but so do our child care providers. Market rate for pre-K child care providers, they kind of vary by county. In Forsyth County, we need to see that rate increase so that providers can stay in the business of serving families, and they do that very well.
Commissioner Martin, thank you so much, Dr. Finney. Commissioner
Thank
Martin, would you like to join us?
Thank you very much, Liz, and good afternoon to everyone. I'd like to sort of pick up on Dr. Finney's comments about advocacy. It clearly was a sort of a central area for our task force. And I just want to take my time today to really talk about local and state advocacy in a little detail. I would submit that our local advocacy in Forsyth County began with the pre-K priority was organized in 2014. And that was actually led for 7 years by the CEO of Family Services, who manages our local Head Start program. The pre-K priority recognized that best practices needed to be identified and good data was needed to generate local advocacy. And after 7 years of doing that, the pre-K priority said, I think we can get a better local focus on advocacy if we create an early childhood task force. And we were very fortunate that the Kate V. Reynolds Foundation supported the pre-K priorities work and actually paid for a position at Family Services to assist. You actually hear her today, Leslie Mullinex. And that person, by the way, Leslie was invaluable in keeping our task force on track and sending reminders and coordinating all the meetings and sending out materials. I think by inviting the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Board, the City Council of Winston-Salem, and the Forsyth County Commissioners to appoint members to serve on the task force, it was assured that the 3 largest governmental entities were at the table. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the 31 task force members for agreeing to serve for a year on the task force. I think all of us would know that in any long-term volunteer committee work, there's going to be some attrition in attendance at meetings. But our attendance at regular task force meetings and the many subcommittee meetings that were held remained very strong throughout the year. And I think this level of involvement indicated a strong commitment to improving pre-K opportunities in Forsyth County. Clearly, 4-year-olds represent our future. Or as we have a local billboard suggest, our future is 4 years old. With the awarding of the American Rescue Act Plan funds by our commissioners a couple months ago, I think for the next 2 years, advocacy at the local level needs to focus on raising private funds to support local scholarships to Forsyth Technical Community College, to develop a pipeline of future edge childcare workers and pre-K teacher assistants. And then we also need to focus on raising funds for 4-year scholarships for existing childcare and pre-K teacher assistants to attend Winston-Salem State University to become pre-K teachers. I want to speak for a moment about the expectations my fellow county commissioners have for this ARPA grant. Our commissioners are looking for the creation of a new infrastructure that brings under one umbrella all the pre-K programs that are currently managed by 4 different entities with different sources of funding. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools with classrooms funded by federal Title I funds. Family Services with programs funded with federal Head Start funds. NC Pre-K community centers funded with NC Pre-K funds. And private providers basically funded through tuition. The 30 pilot classrooms will include classrooms from all 4 entities, but not equally. The school district and Head Start will each have 4 classrooms. There will be 8 NC Pre-K community center classrooms, and there'll be 14 classrooms located in private pre-K centers. All classrooms will not need the same support, but in those 30 classrooms, equity will be achieved in several areas. Of great interest to the commissioners, teacher and teacher assistant compensation will be targeted to be at the school district level. Staff development for teachers and teacher assistants will be consistent. Coaching support and resources will be provided to all teachers. And family engagement, namely training and support for pre-K parents, will be standardized. Hopefully, the grant evaluation will be able to verify the presence of high quality instruction and positive outcomes for pre-K students in all 3 different pre-K settings. If that happens, I would be optimistic that some level of sustainable local dollars could follow. Advocacy at the state level, and Lewis showed a couple of great charts, Dr. Finney, must address not only additional pre-K funding slots, but also the inequity of state funding percentages by county. By the way, a pre-K slot amounts to approximately, excuse me, $5,000 for each child. When state funding became available for pre-K about 30 years ago, those counties that were ready to accept those funds received all they requested, and they've kept them. But later, as more counties began to request funds, there were fewer slots to be awarded. And that's exactly why, for example, Guilford County to our east receives funding to support 65% of their eligible 4-year-olds, and Forsyth County receives funding for only 28%. The North Carolina Department of Human Services, DHHS, could begin addressing this inequity by awarding new pre-K slots first to counties below the state average, and then those slots that are left over could be awarded to counties that are above the state average. Excuse me again. Of course, advocacy must include continuing to increase the number of pre-K slots. And finally, I want to make a mention about the Leandro case. I apologize again, I didn't bring my water here. Leandro has been to the North Carolina Supreme Court 3 times in the past 25 years. And the 3rd case was decided 2 weeks ago. The court ordered the North Carolina General Assembly to pay $500 million to school districts so that North Carolina can offer a sound basic education to all school-age students. While the details of how Leandro funds will be spent are not yet available, it is fair to say that there will be additional money to fund pre-K slots for low-income students. How the General Assembly responds will be determined in the next legislative session by the newly elected House and Senate members. They will return to Raleigh next January, so stay tuned. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. And I think a lot of the issues you touched on lead nicely into our next session. If you want to, great. Thanks for turning your camera off. Our next section is focusing on an issue that we know is prevalent in early childhood programs and communities across our state and country, and is a key area of the task force report. It is recruiting, supporting, and retaining pre-K educators. Our discussion is going to be led by Winston-Salem Forsyth County School Superintendent Tricia McManus and Leslie Molinix, the pre-K priority manager. Superintendent McManus, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. And it's an honor to be here today. And I was very, it was a pleasure to serve as vice chair of the task force and to work alongside so many people that are passionate about educating our youngest learners. And so it was a great group to be with, and some great recommendations came out of the work around educators and having consistency across all of the different pre-K programs. And so that is one of the unique challenges of this work, is that, you know, we have, as you've already heard, we have pre-K programs that are in the school district, Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. We've got Head Start programs, we've got private programs and child care centers. And so, you know, the question that we sought to answer, and the recommendations were about how do we actually ensure consistency for our educators when it comes to recruiting, compensating, evaluating, and supporting our educators. And so basically, there were three main recommendations that came out of this work. And one was around an equity manager that would actually work alongside Effie McMillan in our office. And this would be an equity manager that would basically work to ensure that there are consistent practices in our programs. And equity, there would be ongoing equity assessments, and based on classroom instruction, based on child and family supports and services, teacher professional development, transition into and out of the pre-K program, and data and evaluation. And so this equity manager is going to be hired in the school system, but is going to work across all entities to make sure that we are consistent with our efforts around educators. Another one of the recommendations was around compensation. And so we are actually working in compensation to have a uniform salary schedule, and it would align all teachers across sectors, would align, the salaries would be aligned with our current salaries in Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools, with a base rate of pay for all qualifying teachers and teacher assistants. And also there's a lot of work, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then Leslie will talk after, but about support with licensure and making sure that all of our teachers have the same opportunities, or teacher assistants have the same opportunities to actually receive their license. And you'll hear a little bit about our career pathways and how we're going to make that happen. And there also will be scholarships and retention bonuses for our pre-K educators. And so a lot of work around compensation has been discussed, and how do we ensure that across all entities, you know, that our educators are consistently compensated no matter which entity they work. Another one of our recommendations is around supporting professional development, technical assistance, and ongoing coaching for our educators. And so this is very exciting, but we have developed ways to actually provide coaching and professional development together with all educators across all different pre-K programs, and all based on research, all research-based practices on what a pre-K classroom should look like, what should the curriculum look like. And so that consistency across all programs will ensure that all of our students exit pre-K kindergarten ready. And so we're really excited about that. Their coaching has been outlined to be robust, to be one-on-one, to be differentiated depending on the needs of each of our teachers. And so those three recommendations around the equity manager, which we're already moving forward on thanks to the grant, consistent and equitable compensation, and teacher credentialing. We are very excited about partnerships that are going to allow students in high school to take CTE classes that would that would help them on that path to getting a birth to pre-K license, going straight then into programs at Forsyth Tech to continue down that road, and then into Winston-Salem State. And again, Leslie will talk more about that when she comes on next. So again, compensation, equity across all of our programs, and actually how we support our educators, it's going to be consistent. And so we can ensure that all of our classrooms will have that high quality teaching and learning happening every day for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent McManus. Leslie Mullenix, you're up. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm filling in today for Dr. Kim Pemberton from Winston-Salem State University. Dr. Pemberton is the chair of education there, and she's been involved as a member not only of the task force, but she's also been a strategic part of our work group that has focused on the pre-K workforce and teacher pipeline. Both she and Dr. Natasha Spellman of Winston-Salem State have been a part of that birth to kindergarten program that is at the university that offers not only a bachelor, but also a master's degree as a BKE teacher. And it's one of the best in the state, if not the country, and they have a very high rating in terms of their BKE degree. So we are very, very fortunate to have them in our backyard. They have been instrumental, both of those ladies, to ensuring that we have open communication between the local institutions of learning here within Forsyth County. So in fact, that group has been meeting collectively over the past year to explore how they can enhance the connections to one another's programs. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of helping convene that group, which is why I'm sitting in today to try to give an overview of that piece of it. What they've been working to do, it aligns with the recommendations that I'm going to speak to. They've been working to outline a clear path for students to gain any number of pre-K teaching credentials, whether it's a child development associate or associate's degree, or a BKE, which is a birth to kindergarten education degree. And that's the full licensure. That's what we'd love for every teacher to have. However, it takes a lot of time, energy, and money to get that degree, which is part of the focus of what we've been talking about in our smaller focused pipeline group. They've included also, I don't want to leave out the other instrumental folks that have been at the table. We've had the birth to kindergarten education coordinator, Stephanie Lackey from Forsyth Technical Community College, and also from the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools. As Superintendent McManus mentioned, we've had the really great partnership of the Career Technical Education, otherwise known as CTE, in early childhood education. So they have a two-part coursework that students can do over at the Career Center, and I think is also going to be expanding to some other places. But at the Career Center is really where it all begins, or in those birth to kindergarten classes that they can do in the CTE work. What happens is they can get a credential that will then articulate directly over into Forsyth Tech University, or excuse me, Technical Community College. And once they are there, they can continue on and do 2 years of learning there. And then the articulation agreement helps them to next go to their 4-year degree over at Winston-Salem State University. They could also go to UNCG or another program that has a BKE. But we know that we've had these folks at the table and they are working to do an articulated pathway that is also something visually that parents of those students in high school can understand, and that students can understand, and that can help them kind of process the next steps. That's one of the things that this group found is a lot of times students may be interested, but they kind of falter when they come to graduation. They're not quite sure, like, well, what are all the things I need to do from here? So what we're trying to do in that group of the workforce is to do some practical steps, some visualization that you'll be seeing coming out later in our kind of communications through pre-K priority on a teacher pipeline that is very clear, that is very articulated, and shows students from one step to the next how they can continue in this pathway. And not only will it be for students, but it will also be for those educators that are already professionals in the field that may want to go back to school to get higher credentialing or get additional credentialing. So we want to be very invitational and intentional to reach out to our current educators as well, to encourage them to continue on. So another part of what we wanted to talk about is the recommendation, not only of this pipeline, a robust pipeline, but really to talk about people that are returning to the classroom or continuing in the classroom. There needs to be ways to help them to continue in that pipeline. Stipends and scholarship opportunities are key. We have been looking across not only North Carolina, but across the country at other programs that have done this, and those things work. If you can get folks in our community, such as some of our local government outlets, our businesses, our local business community, and maybe philanthropy, but you can coalesce around this goal of helping teachers to go back to school by giving them some stipends and some scholarship opportunities specifically for early ed. And we know that it works. We have seen it work in other communities, and we'd love to do and implement that here. So that's one of the things we're going to continue to work on. And that is one of the recommendations that has come up. And that really is coming also from a place of equity and tearing down some of the barriers and removing some of those barriers that have been in place for students and for returning professionals. And lastly, I want to mention that we have looked at how teachers are at the center, not only of the classroom, but these teachers and these early educators are the workforce behind the workforce. As we all know, we saw, and it was elevated during the pandemic, that without our early educators and our early caregivers, it is really hard for a lot of folks that are in the workforce that have children to continue on in their careers, to continue on in the jobs that they have. If they don't have safe, affordable, and accessible childcare and education, it becomes very difficult for our regular workforce to do that work. So we want to make sure to highlight that as a means of growing in Forsyth County and being a healthy metropolitan area, that we have ways for children and families to continue to be cared for in a way that attracts people to Forsyth County. And that we really want to give the level of respect and like we were talking about, salary parity is part of that respect to the teachers that are doing this work. They do, they go above and beyond, as we know a lot of teachers do, but I think sometimes we forget the level of education that these early education teachers have also acquired. They have spent time and energy in school, they've gotten these credentials, and they deserve our respect as well as salary parity. So that is another one of the recommendations that I'm just kind of, I'm kind of coming back to that Superintendent McManus mentioned, and also Commissioner Martin, and all of our speakers are going to be speaking to that equity piece. I would say, just to end my portion, that you guys will, if you stay tuned, you'll be hearing more about the teacher pipeline. M Creative has been helping with our messaging here in Forsyth County. And one of the things that we're going to be focusing on this year is messaging about teacher pipeline and helping teachers to have the tools, the resources, and then getting that out there so that people understand why it's so important to support teachers. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Superintendent McManus and Leslie, for highlighting and walking us through those critical teacher support and pipeline issues. We're now going to transition to our final topic, which is really, I think, a great way to end. And it's around supporting children and families, which is why we're all here. We're going to be led by Tracy Ross of Family Services and Odette Sanchez of Latino Community Services. Welcome, Tracy.
Well, thank you, Liz, for having me today. Family Services was the early convener of the pre-K priority, and I'm joining the table a little late. I was selected as the new president and CEO about a year ago, but I have to say the team of people that I've been working with has got me really caught up to speed. We also run the local Head Start program and work closely with children and families in the community. Head Start has an excellent model of family engagement, and I'm very excited to be here today to explain that to our listeners. Family engagement is an interactive process through which program staff and families, family members, and their children build positive and goal-oriented relationships. It is a shared responsibility of families and professionals that requires a mutual respect for the roles and strengths each has to offer. Family engagement means doing with, not doing for or to families. At the program level, family engagement involves parents' engagement with their children and with staff as they work together towards goals that families choose for themselves and for their children. It also involves families and staff working towards goals to improve our program. Family support specialists work closely with families, other professionals, and community partners in ways that promote equity, inclusiveness, and cultural and linguistic responsiveness. Children are at the heart of meaningful family engagement. They are the inspiration for positive, goal-oriented provider-parent relationships. Parents enter the relationships with family support specialists on their children's behalf, and they deepen these relationships with their children in mind. They know their children better than anyone. Their temperaments, their personalities, their strengths, their vulnerabilities, their talents, and their special needs. They know their cultures and what they want to transmit to their children. When parents share their knowledge with us, they improve provider practices and our program quality. Family support specialists create an authentic partnership with parents when they convey their eagerness to welcome parents' expertise and their readiness to share the care. Parents can believe in partnership when they feel the passion providers share with them for the quality of the child's everyday experiences, for supporting the parent-child relationship, and for laying the foundations early for a thriving future. Community engagement refers to the mutually respectful, strengths-based interactions of staff and families with community members and agencies at all levels. These partnerships support parents' roles as valued community members in their progress towards their goals for themselves and their children. Community partners provide tangible child development supports and resources that families and staff want and need. They can work with families and family support specialists towards these goals. These include parents' educational advancement, economic mobility, and other aspects of family well-being. Family support specialists actively seek out and respond to community voices, strengths, and needs. They collaborate with families, community members, and other local agencies to identify common goals, align resources, and share data for continuous improvement and effective partnerships. The family support specialist position will serve as a liaison to families in the pre-K priority model program, primarily the 4 classrooms within the Winston-Salem, Forsyth County School District, and 14 classrooms of private independent childcare providers where the position is currently not offered. We currently have this position in our Head Start classrooms. The position will enhance the connectivity of the family with their child and the teachers through a family and community engagement process, as I just described. There's actually some family outcomes that we all strive for. There's 7 of them, actually. First one is the family well-being. Families are safe, healthy, have opportunities for educational advancement and economic mobility, some of the things that we just discussed, and have access to physical and mental health services, housing, and food assistance. 2, positive parent-child relationships. Beginning with transitions to parenthood, parents and families develop warm relationships that nurture their children's health, development, and learning. Families as lifelong educators. Parents and families observe, guide, promote, and participate in the everyday learning of their children at home, at school, and in their communities. Number 4, families as learners. Parents and families learn about their child's personality, development, and learning style. They also advance their own interests in their own learning interests through education, training, and other experiences that support their parenting, career, and life goals. 5, family engagement in transitions. Parents and families encourage and advocate for their child's learning and development as they transition to new learning environments within and between early childhood services, early elementary grades, and beyond. Family connections to peers and community is number 6. Parents and families form connections with peers, mentors, and other community members in formal or informal social networks. These networks are supportive and educational. They honor and are inclusive of families' home language and culture, and they enhance family social well-being and community life. We do this by using our collaborative partners, some you'll hear from upcoming, and discussing family needs and nurturing personal connections between family members and our partner agencies. We then transition families to other service providers through a soft handoff. And we stay involved to support the families to ensure their needs are being met. And finally, families as advocates and leaders. Parents and families advocate for their children and play leadership roles in their child's education. They are encouraged to participate in decision-making, policy development, and organizing activities in their communities and states in their communities to improve their children's safety, health, development, and learning experiences. Thank you so much, Liz, for this opportunity to talk about family engagement. It's a passion of mine.
Absolutely. Thank you. Odette, welcome. Thank you for continuing this discussion around support for children and families.
Good afternoon, everyone. Odette Jambo Sanchez, Latino Community Services Executive Director, and it's a pleasure to be here. Definitely the support for families and children, it's something that is definitely also in our hearts. As a grassroots organization and one that works directly with the whole family, Latino Community Services envisions a society enriched by the cultural diversity of its member, where all are valued for the contribution and have the opportunity to build their dreams. So Latino Community Services, short, we use LCS, partners with Latino families to equip children and adults to fulfill their education and economic potential, hoping for a positive and healthy future. What we do is we build bridges between the Latino community and the greater community as we facilitate relationships that actually bring new understanding and benefit to all involved. The data shows that in North Carolina, African Americans, Latinos, American Indians, and those living in poverty often suffer the worst health and education outcomes. To address these disparities and have a positive outcome in our approach and decision-making, we intentionally created and implemented a robust bilingual preschool curriculum for children that it is to be kindergarten ready. But as a community partner for the pre-K priority, one of the reasons that we seek to support is reducing the barriers to the pre-K access for families that are especially in these marginalized communities in Forsyth County, which is really imperative. Facilitating an enrollment process for families that can understand, feel comfortable about registering their children in the pre-K program. Also understanding the challenges, bringing awareness to the challenges that they face due to certain limitations, for example, a language barrier. The Latino Community Services has committed to providing translation support to strengthen communications between service providers, networks, and address the challenges using a family-centered lens. With that, also being able to facilitate the communication, whether it is with the school system, with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School, whether it is with a community agency through the pre-K program that they may be offering. We want to be able to be the partner that it is there, reaching out to the community, facilitating that line of communications in a language that the families will understand and feel comfortable. But with that also, as an agency, we offer programs like English as a second language to be able to help the families adapt to the new culture here in Winston-Salem in Forsyth County School to facilitate the possibilities to open the lines of communication. Parents, caregivers with language barriers or who are not proficient in English will have in us a community partner that will help them navigate the process. Also, carrying that support through the pre-K experience, the translation support for Spanish-speaking families in the communities that are enrolling for pre-K, and once their children are in their classroom, supporting the families with translation services for parents so that they will be able to have engagement opportunities as well. Because Latino Community Services is family focused, we're seeking to strengthen the entire family and help them adapt to the new culture in Forsyth County. What we've done, a couple of things, is to strengthen the parent engagement, is develop workshops for parents. These workshops are actually in Spanish for families that are limited to English, but as they're going through the different programs of learning the language, that they're able to understand the importance of them being engaged in their child's education. So we stress the importance of the children and early childhood education. The workshops are served as an entryway into the idea of parent-child education and how the home is the first classroom. So there's families, and many of the families which are from low income and marginalized population, are able to receive a literacy starter kit in partnership with the Forsyth County Public Library. And through different methods, the parents were taught to read with their children at home so students can enhance their literacy skills alongside our programs. And with this help, the families be engaged in the child's education and set them on a path for success. But as we're doing this, what we're hoping is to actually eliminate the barriers that are actually facing the community are facing to be able to have access to a pre-K program that they can actually register their children and feel comfortable about. So as a community partner, it's important for us to be able to provide the translation services, interpretation services also for any documentation that is provided to facilitate the accessibility to the pre-K programs. And that is some of the parts that Latino Community Services committed to do through the pre-K priority.
Thank you so much, Odette and Tracy, for grounding this discussion in support for children and families and eliminating those barriers. To bring our discussion today to a close and leave us kind of with what's next, we're going to hear from Keturah Jackson, Executive Director of the Child Care Resource Center that provides consumer education, childcare referrals and resources, and professional development opportunities to support quality childcare in Forsyth County, as well as 8 surrounding counties. Keturah, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Liz. And I just want to thank everybody who has already shared their information, the recommendations, listen to everyone recap the work that has been done to support the vision behind pre-K priority. Shows what we can do as a community when we make a commitment. I've been involved with the pre-K priority since the beginning when we were calling it Universal Pre-K, and I'm so proud of the progress that we have made and the work of the steering committee and the early education task force. I can remember sitting in the conference room at Family Services, which it always seems to come back with this project of Family Services over 7 years ago, hearing a report out from the consultants that KB Reynolds Charitable Trust hired to focus on early education issues in our community and thinking we are finally moving in the right direction. We are moving together and we are united in purpose. The recommendations that were shared earlier by our earlier panelists, they will be implemented as a part of the pilot project that recently received funding from Forsyth County through the American Recovery Plan Act, or ARPA. And the ARPA funding will help us get the ball rolling with the first 30 classrooms. But in order to ensure that we have an inclusive program that provides high quality learning opportunities for all 4-year-olds in our community, we still have much work that needs to be done, much additional funding that we need to find to be sure that we're supporting all 4-year-olds in the community. This will be challenging. It will be something that we will need to tackle as a community. We know that from the many people and organizations that have been involved in the planning and learning process, that there's great passion to create greater access to high quality pre-K for the children of Forsyth County. And we all need to continue to figure out how we work together for the good of the children. There's a commitment statement that is posted on the website, and now it's up on the screen. And if you take a look at the screen, you'll see that there are 6 bullets that we are committed to. We're committed to developing affordable, high quality pre-K experiences. We're committed to eliminating disparities and achieving equity so that the children are ready to succeed in school. We're committed to ensuring ensuring access to high quality, which and culturally competent programs, which will lead to school success. And we're committed to going beyond what has been done before. Sometimes in the community, we start these projects and then they just peter out, but pre-K priority will not be one of those. We're going to go beyond and do more than we have done before. So reading the commitment statement and knowing that there's still work to be done to achieve this goal, we would like to invite each of you to stay connected to our work, to join us in our efforts to continue to make high quality pre-K and the children of our community a priority. And just thinking through, how we do that, how we make that happen, just visiting the website, gathering information about what has already been done, and maybe calling one of the steering committees members just to figure out how you can fit in. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Katora. And thanks to all of our panelists for lifting up these recommendations, as well as the work that is still to be done. We do have a bit of time for some questions, and I am going to jump in and kick us off. I'm curious, as I said, I write and think a lot about pre-K and early care and education overall across the state, and I know that it looks different everywhere. Keeping that in mind, what advice would you give other communities looking to expand pre-K access? Anyone is free to respond.
Hi, Liz. I think I will take a chance at that. I would say to other community members is speak to your community. This work, as Katora just described, cannot be done in silos. It cannot be done individually. And I think that the pre-K priority has been so successful up until this point because of the collaboration of the experts in the community coming together and doing the work. So I would say, talk to your communities, talk to the parents. What are their needs? What do they want to see? And see how you can get there.
And I know that parent voice and engagement is something that the pre-K priority and the task force has specifically focused on. Does anyone else want to add anything about advice to other communities?
Yeah, this is Louis Finney with Smart Start. I think what's critical that I think is unique and special about our community that is around collaboration and not one person thinking that they can serve the betterment of all. And collaboration meaning not just the institution, but starting with those parents as the first teachers and taxpayers to support this particular effort. I think with the collaboration that we have as a model that is not just good throughout the state of North Carolina, but I think also is something that could be good throughout multiple states. So I think collaboration, but also putting those parents as the teachers first and recognizing how important they are in making these decisions will help in any success and hopefully our continued success.
I was going to add one more thing. Is that okay, Liz?
Absolutely.
I was thinking, because something that has been unique about our work and our partnerships that Lewis is discussing is, and I don't see this everywhere, so this is really exciting, and that is the fact that we have a consistent curriculum. We have consistent across all entities, even working to achieve this with private and private providers. I mean, that's pretty incredible. That we not only have a consistent curriculum, but that we are working to the same licensure, the same compensation. I mean, having that standard of excellence across all will help ensure that kindergarten readiness, that all kids have the same access to high quality pre-K. I think that's pretty unique. And I think it's the fact that we already have that with curriculum, but we're moving to that in all the other facets of early childhood, I think is really incredible. And so I think rather than expanding, fast and not having that strong, consistent, high quality programming, I think that the way that we're approaching this work is the right way. And that is to ensure quality as we begin that further expansion.
Thank you. Specifically for Commissioner Martin, if you want to weigh in, what advice would you give to other county commissioners in building consensus around the importance of local early childhood investments?
Good, thanks, Liz. I think I've been a commissioner for 8 years, and I've been to a fair number of meetings with other commissioners, and there are some legislative goal committees and other things I've been participated in. And I think that our 100 counties are really diverse and are different. And I can just tell you the work of commissioners, while school funding is a piece of their part, there's a school board that actually is elected to handle that. And people do try to stay in their own kind of lanes of sorts, but the funding is important, that link. And so obviously, if requests are coming from the school district for, local pre-K funds, for example, in some kind of way, that could be a part of a discussion. But I think the biggest thing is that I think commissioners can be advocates for state level involvement, and state level things do not happen overnight, and they really need. I mean, I have several close friends who are legislators, and they are just bombarded with thousands of communications and just more issues than can be imagined. Everything from just citizen A to a large interest group, special interest group that they're dealing with. And to get their attention, I will say that commissioners probably have sometimes a closer relationship, or we're together with our legislative delegation, perhaps a little bit more. And there's an opportunity for commissioners to be a voice in that. And I think that, I think one of the things that's really helped here was having the pre-K, you have to sort of educate commissioners. And a lot of that education, I think, can take place with, things like the pre-K priority. Well, certainly in every county, there's a Smart Start board, and that might be the entity that is the group to maybe help lead that education. And I would hope, the Smart Start board is required to have the school district or districts representation on it. But if it doesn't have, like, for example, private providers, or if it doesn't have any of the Head Start kind of staff and folks a part of it, that needs to be, they need to be included. So it may be a larger group, like a pre-K priority, could be formed to really become an advocacy group, both locally and statewide. And perhaps that's one way that I know our folks here in the pre-K priority would be happy to, to speak with other people about that. And I think that as groups broaden their folks, the idea of having a task force, that may or may not be a good idea. I think there has to be a readiness for the task force. I think we were ready. We had a lot of work that had gone before, but on the short term, and not every, there's another 18 months to spend the ARPA funds, and there are probably still some counties that all of those dollars are not committed. And if they're not, this might be an opportunity for a pre-K group, could be the Smart Start board, to say, what would you think, commissioners, of using some ARPA funds to actually study our efforts with pre-K, study our pre-K efforts, and also maybe figure out a good evaluation system, give you a report, and maybe have some strategies on how we all advocate better for pre-K at the state level. Not a local group to just ask for local money, but to ask for, let's understand, evaluate, and approach it. So I think every community is different, and if there are folks on this webinar, that are outside of Forsyth County and thinking about it, I think folks, there's been a lot of no sense in reinventing wheels, and there are a lot of good folks here who'd be happy to talk with them about that. So,
thank you. Dr. Finney, did you have something to add?
Yes, I was glad Commissioner Martin brought that up. Actually, the state legislates Smart Start to actually have a board that we actually have representation from the mayor's office, family services, Head Start, the school district, private child care, but also parents. And across the state, we actually have a statewide model that actually advocates on behalf of the state as it relates to funds. So we do have a good model that's been pretty successful. So I'm glad he brought that up. It's really made up of many of the people actually who are on this call right now are actually part of that makeup of that board. So that is a role that we do pretty strongly, and we can appreciate any additional support we can get, particularly with our board, who's pretty active as it relates to the advocacy for early childhood on the state level. So thank you, Commissioner Martin, for bringing that up.
Thank you. I have one other question. I'm curious how you see, of course, understanding the importance of pre-K and pre-K access. Generally, when we think of pre-K, we're thinking of 1 year before kindergarten, and we know the importance of the first 3 years as well when it comes to brain development and learning. How do you see pre-K investments strengthening the entire birth to kindergarten continuum of care and education in Forsyth County?
Well, I think for one that's critical, and I believe it was brought up earlier, is that we all use the similar assessment tools in pre-K. But I think even more important in the pre-K investment is actually invested in 0 to 3. Because really, it starts with pregnant mothers to try to really improve the system. But one advantage that we do have in using the same assessment tools is that when our kids transition into kindergarten is very important that we transition the same educational information. And I gotta see our job in Smart Start as convening for early childhood to making the school district successful as well. Because part of what we can do and really capture is helping those third grade reading scores by preparing those kids before they actually get into kindergarten.
Anyone else want to comment on that continuum of early learning in Forsyth County?
I just completely agree with Lewis, that, that language development, social skills, just the prerequisites for learning, all of that starts right after birth, and goes all the way. I mean, and when I think about pre-K, I know we're talking about 4-year-olds, but there are a lot of students across the country that are in pre-K at 3 and 4 at 3 and 4-year-olds. And so, once we get our 4-year track down, maybe we can back it up and start even earlier. But it's not really just about the academics, but the social part of learning, the language development, that's so important, the exposure to words and books early on, all of that's important. And so the sooner we can start supporting our families with that, with the resources that they need, with the knowledge, I think the better. It's part of that entire continuum. And again, not just focused on academics. We have years to make sure kids are learning how to read, but it's those prerequisite skills that are so important.
Thank you all so much. If there's no one else, feel free to jump in if anyone else has any comments. But I really, really appreciate all of our expert panelists. I appreciate the task force and the pre-K priority for reaching out to me to be a part of this today. And I appreciate all of our attendees for joining, for your interest in ensuring access to high quality early care and education in North Carolina and Forsyth County and beyond. It's really been a robust discussion with so many key components. We invite you to stay engaged and involved with the work of the pre-K priority by visiting www.prekpriority.org and following them on social media as well. I also encourage everyone to follow the work of EdNC at ednc.org. I am writing about pre-K priority, pre-K, early childhood all the time. I really appreciate, again, everyone for joining us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank y'all.